My name is Martha Sterling. I am 52 years old, and I have lived 25 of them, next to the same man. Now, answer me, what would you do if, after dedicating half your life to someone, that person looked you right in the eye, in front of everyone, and said that you want someone younger, without pity, without shame, without an ounce of gratitude? Wow. I didn't think that could happen to me. I have always been correct. A companion. That woman who no one notices because she is always taking care of everything. The house, the bills, the silence. For years, I thought love was enough. I thought loyalty protected, and I trusted. But the truth is that blind love is the first to stumble. If you've come this far, Mulan, maybe you've felt it too. That twinge in the chest of someone who was left behind, changed, underestimated. Wow. Maybe you're wondering how anyone can be so cold. And I understand you. No. But in this video, I'll tell you exactly how I turned the tide. Without shouting, voice, without humiliating myself, and without being defeated. Because when he thought he was discarding me, that's when it started to fall. And everything he didn't imagine happened. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. Not everything is as it seems. And sometimes the one who seems weak is the one who carries the most accurate blow. That night, in the crowded ballroom of the Watergate Hotel, when my husband took the stage in the middle of our silver anniversary party and took the microphone, I already knew. I knew he wouldn't honor me. He knew those words would come like knives. What I didn't know was that he would have the courage to do that in front of everyone, to dismiss me as if I were an old outfit, a closed chapter, a burden. But what no one there expected was that I was ready. And when it was my turn to speak, what I revealed not only silenced the room, it turned the whole story upside down. If you are here with me now, feeling this tightness in your chest, this silent anger, this desire to see someone rise with dignity, so it stays. And if you can, and you adore, leave me a like. Subscribe to the channel. Oh man, this is not vanity. It's just a way for me to know that I am not alone, that this story, as painful as it is, also touched you, because sometimes all we need is for someone to listen and feel with us. I remember that routine well. It was always the same, but there was a certain comfort in that. I woke up around 6:30 in the morning, with that smell of freshly brewed coffee spreading through the kitchen. Still dark outside. I put on my soft slippers and went straight to the balcony, where my begonias were waiting for me, with the leaves still damp from the serene of the night. It was my ritual, watering the plants, giving thanks for another day, and then sitting quietly with my cup of blue crockery, watching the slow movement of the neighborhood there in Bethesda. Our street was quiet, well-kept houses, white picket fences, neighbors who waved from afar but did not get involved. Darren always left after me. I prepared his coffee, left the folded newspaper next to the plate, and went back to the computer. I worked as a financial controller for an academic publishing house in D.C. Wow. L'année dernière, I'd seen Tar on the Calvary Seal, which made me lucky enough to do almost everything from home. He would go down around 8, adjusting his tie in a hurry. He barely looked at me. But he said a dry, "Thank you." Over time, that thank you became just a nod. Then, wise, hound, silence. I pretended it didn't hurt, but it hurt. The house was mine, bought with the help of my parents, who came from Germany with a suitcase in their hand and faith in their chest. It was their gift when we got married. Start life without debt, my mother would say, as she wrapped the keys in a small wooden box. I thought we were going to build a home there. At first, it was good. Darren looked happy. Fun. I worked a lot, but on weekends we took small trips, dinners with friends, watched movies hugging. But the years passed, and along with them, enthusiasm. We tried to have children. For 7 years, I lived between consultations, exams, waits, but it didn't happen, and he never touched on the subject again. Despite this, I took care of everything. The house is always clean. The bills are up to date. The garden is flowery. I liked that order. That silence that made me feel like I was in control of something. Even when inside, I was already beginning to realize that things were going out of place. Darren began to change slowly. First, it was the perfume. Then, the frequent trips to the gym. New clothes, whitened teeth, a cell phone that he wouldn't let go, even when he went to the bathroom. I noticed every detail, but he didn't say anything. There is one thing that only those who live a long marriage understand. We learn to protect ourselves in silence. He learns not to ask questions whose answers may destroy the image he has sustained for years. But the truth does not wait to be invited. It runs through the cracks, through the averted looks, through the absences that become more present than the presences. And I, there, pruning the plants, setting the table, pretending that everything was still as before. There was a day when he arrived late. He didn't even take off his shoes. He went straight into the shower. I saw, and Dagon, howled through the security camera I installed in the garage without telling him that he wasn't even wearing a suit. He was wearing a flowered shirt that I had never seen, and smiled. No, you are at some, Anowantashchi, you asteri. Smile in a way that I haven't smiled at me in years. That night, I slept with a lump in my throat. I looked at him lying next to me and thought, at what point did you stop being mine? Tell me, have you ever felt it? That icy moment when you realize that whoever is by your side has been gone for a long time? If you've experienced something like this, comment below with a "I've felt it," or just write "It's true." Sometimes we just need to know that we are not alone. And it was at this point that I began to notice his silences, not as an absence, but as a strategy. the affection that became convenience, the presence that became a facade. No. And yet, I continued to take care. I kept fixing his collar, folding his shirts like my mom taught me. But deep down, something inside me I already knew. I already knew that all that peace was hanging by a thread, and that soon, oh, very soon, everything I thought was mine would be put in check. But what I didn't know yet, it was how much they were willing to do to get me out of the scene. The signals did not arrive like thunder. They came like a leak on the roof, a drop here, a drop there, until the wood begins to rot inside. Darren began to avoid the conversations we used to have in the late afternoon on the porch. Before, he heard about my day, asked me about my readings, the students of the publishing house. Now, and he barely looked me in the eye when I tried to start a conversation. I knew. He said he was tired, was not credible, turned to the side on the couch, and got lost on the cell phone screen, always with the screen facing down when I passed by. It was no longer tired. It was distancing. It was distance. And I felt, with a cutting clarity, that he no longer saw me as a woman. The subtle comments began, but they hurt like a needle entering raw flesh. You should try another haircut, something more modern. On another day, have you ever thought about having a light lift just to raise this expression? I smiled slightly. On the outside. Ananio, esinubokakam. On the outside. Inside. He swallowed hard. The words stayed there, stuck like stones in the stomach. I have never been vain of exaggeration, but I have always taken care of myself. I used my creams, did my nails, kept my hair well cut. I was sober, new, not old, but for him, sobriety was already synonymous with disinterest, of carelessness, of decadence. At night, he spent more time in the office than he did with me. He said he needed to resolve company emails, but left the door ajar, and I saw the reflection of the screen in the mirror of the bookshelf. Social networks, travel sites, investment forums, and then sometimes, when he thought I wasn't around, photos of women, not vulgar, not explicit, but young, cheerful, with gaping smiles that I hadn't given in a long time, not for lack of will, but because I no longer had anyone to smile with. My travel began to increase. Before, she tried and touchdown. There were 2 or 3 per semester. Now, they were monthly. Then, fortnightly. Always meetings in New York. Or conferences in Atlanta. When he returned, he brought new shirts, different perfumes, and a rehearsed tiredness. He said that the hotel was bad, that the flight was delayed, that the customer was too demanding, and I pretended to believe it, because part of me still wanted to preserve the idea that everything was just stress. One Saturday night, we went to dinner with a couple of friends. In the middle of the conversation, I mentioned a book I had read and suggested a documentary about women who reinvent themselves at 50. He laughed. He laughed out loud. Martha has been seeing these empowerment programs now. Soon she will want to become a blogger. The friends laughed together, but with that uncomfortable look of someone who knows he went too far. I smiled with my eyes downcast. I swallowed that hot shame, like someone swallowing a stone with ice water. With a yearnty will turn. The next day, on, while trimming the dry leaves of my plants, Candace, my next-door neighbor, Lenore, called me over the fence. Is everything okay with you? Martha, you walk so quiet. I smiled. She said everything was fine. Why, you, just a little overwhelmed. She insisted. I'm Okantapa. I'll be on your shoe. Darren has been traveling a lot, right? Is this all just work? I said yes. Well, she looked at her with that look of a woman who has seen a lot. Sometimes they just want to get away from something. I sighed. She added, Alashin Tom, or he what? It's everyone I got, or someone's. That night, I went to sleep looking at the ceiling. I remembered our old trips, Christmases in Vermont, the notes left on the pillow, and the silence of now. Everything had turned to dust, and I, right there, still trying to sweep the corners of the house as if the dust went away with the cloth. But he wasn't. It was the dust of absence, of indifference, of the invisible death of a marriage. It was on that night that I silently accepted that something was wrong. Very wrong. And that maybe I was the last to know about something that had already started a long time ago. But what I didn't know, this doubt was just the beginning, and that, nearness, very soon, I would have no more doubts. I would have proof. That night, I still believed there was room for reconciliation. I woke up early, went to the salon. I soon to, I say, showed your work. Come to the Passion Salon. Arranged my hair the way Darren liked it, straight, with the ends inward. I chose my blue linen ensemble, the same one I wore to one of the first dinners with him in Georgetown, when we were still young and dreamed of a house full of life. I bought a symbolic gift, a men's watch with the inscription on the back, forever, even if time passes. He sent me the location of the restaurant in the middle of the afternoon. Oh, the Lafayette, Modesty Sound, Yansor Capacta, in the heart of Washington. Luxurious, classic, with tall chandeliers and starched linen towels. Upon arrival, I was greeted by solemn waiters and led to a long table with almost 20 seats. Longtime friends, co-workers of his, some familiar faces, others he hadn't seen in years. Celeste, his mother, was there, with a burgundy dress and a look that looked more like a sentence. Darren was beaming, wearing a light gray suit and smiling like a man on his honeymoon. I was surprised by that exaggerated enthusiasm. He did not come to receive me. She just waved from afar, as if greeting an acquaintance. That already tightened my chest. During dinner, down. He avoided me with his eyes. I didn't ask myself anything. He talked animatedly with everyone but me. When dessert arrived, the maître d' came over and whispered something in his ear. Darren stood up, cleared his throat, and asked for attention. Friends, Leo Wyatt, thank you very much for being here on this symbolic date. 25 years. It's a life. It's a life. It needs to be lived with truth. I stared at him. The hall was silent. Oh, what starts together doesn't always end up together. Sometimes we grow, mature, Hayanidiri, and realizes that he needs to start over. Today, I want to say with respect that this cycle ends. Him choosing a new phase. Oh, acted. He's next to someone younger now, more aligned with the man I've become. For a second, cow. I thought I was going to pass out. He said this as if talking about the weather forecast. He looked at me for 2 seconds. Then he turned to the guests and added, with a smile that I will never forget, I've already arranged everything. Martha will leave the apartment by the end of the week. I thank you for everyone's understanding. The only thing that kept me standing was the strength that I didn't know I had. His mother smiled proudly. That was what hurt me the most. She knew. She participated. Oh, I took a deep breath. The fork was still in my hand. The gift I had brought was in my lap. I slowly placed it on the table. I stood up. The whole room was looking at me. And it was at that moment that I made the most unexpected decision of my life. I went to the microphone. Madaya Sword. Alana Nor, he was already returning to the place, confident, with that expression of someone who thought everything was solved. But it wasn't. And what I said there, everything changed. Do you want to know what I said? That's that. This is where things really begin. That morning, I woke up with a discomfort in my chest. I don't know if it was a bad dream or if it was God poking me. As my mother used to say, when intuition hit harder than sleep. It was almost 3 in the morning. The house was dark, silent, but the corridor, no, well, there were voices, low, sweeps. I stood motionless in bed, trying to understand if it was something in my head. But it wasn't. It was Darren. He was talking on the phone, with the door ajar in his office. I got up in silence and went to the door frame of the room, stepping on tiptoe as if I didn't want to scare even the floor. I leaned behind the door and listened. She doesn't suspect anything. Hayes has everything ready. Pause. Yes, Mom. On the day of the party, she will sign. It will be surrounded. There is nowhere to run. No. It will seem like it was her choice. Hayes? Who was Hayes? I have never heard that name. And will she sign? Sign what? I went back to bed with my body cold, but my mind boiling. I trembled inside. It was no longer just a betrayal. It was an ambush. They were planning something bigger, something that involved my signature, I know my possessions, my life. Darren came on in the 4th minutes later. He opened the door slowly. Now, as if he were returning from a trip to the bathroom. He pretended to yawn. I pretended to sleep. I heard his breathing. I felt the mattress sink as he lay down next to me. And there, out, what others? In the dark, an absurd clarity came to me. This was no longer a marriage. It was a minefield. At breakfast, he came down with the same face as always. He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, cold, automatic, and left saying he would have a full day, meeting with client, and then Jim, he said. I just nodded, but inside me, no, a voice was already screaming, "Wake up, Martha." I spent the rest of that day quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't care about anyone. I just sat on the porch with my black-covered notebook and wrote down everything I remembered from that conversation, word for word, until sound, name by name. No. And that's when the penny dropped. Hayes was a lawyer, and by Darren's tone of voice, he was setting up to get me to sign some document during the party, in front of everyone. Nice. Under pressure, it would not be a request. It would be a coup with an audience. And how would I make sense of everything? How to dismantle that plan without arousing suspicion? It was on that day that something in me changed. I was no longer just a betrayed wife. I was a woman, surrounded. But she was also a woman who knew how to listen, who knew how to wait, and that it had more strength than anyone there imagined. Tell me, have you ever had that feeling of being deceived while everyone around you pretends that everything is fine? Have you ever felt this loneliness in the middle of your own home? I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story with all the words that have been stuck in my throat for so long. If you're listening, leave me a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me to keep going and show me that there are more people like me. People who felt it, kept silent, but now want to listen to the end. Because what came after that? It was the beginning of everything I never imagined living. And you can't even imagine who was really behind the plan. The next morning, I was still silent, his head hammering everything he had heard in the early morning. I didn't even have the strength to pass a coffee when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and for a second, I thought about pretending I wasn't home, but I took a deep breath and opened it. It was Celeste, my mother-in-law, with red lipstick, a pearl necklace, and a lemon cake in her hands. He smiled, as if we were living an ordinary Sunday afternoon. I stopped by just to see how you were. Honey, she said, and entering uninvited. I stood still for a second, now trying to figure out what she wanted. The cake was just bait. She sat on the couch and struck up a conversation with that way of hers. Too sweet not to hide poison. Me and Darren talked a lot yesterday. Is tired, stressed. These trips, this work, and you've been so fated too. Martha, we understand. Age matters. Oh, doesn't it? I remained silent. She scanned the room, the bookshelves, the frames. It seemed to measure every corner. Then came the question that I should have expected. You still have those house documents? Remember? The title to the property your parents gave you when you got married. Where do you keep that? Huh? No. I felt a shiver go up my spine. I took a long break, as if trying to remember. I think it's in the safe, along with my father's other paperwork. Why, my... She smiled. A calculated smile. Ah, just curiosity. It's just that. In this whole process, it's good to be very clear, isn't it? After all, after all, the American government is full of pranks. And if the assets are not in the name of the two, they can cause problems in the divorce. She said that as if she cares, but the subtext was clearer than the sky in Bethesda. They were trying to map it all out, to know what was mine, what was not. What could they take from me? Everything is well resolved. Celeste, my father, was methodical, and Aaron always knew that. She feigned surprise. Oh, so it's not in both names. No, it never was. And still, it was the first time I saw her face lose color for a second. She disguised it by fiddling with the napkin she brought with the cake. Ah, good to know. Then you're safe. In the following minutes, she tried to change the subject. He asked about the garden, the plants, my recipes, but it was too late. What she came for, she couldn't. Now, see when I, and so, when it finally left, I hugged the door with both hands, as if it might fall if I didn't hold on. Locked, and I didn't unlock it anymore for hours. I sat on the couch and closed my eyes. That cake, that visit, those questions, they were not out of care. They were for control. They were surrounding me. My first, Darren's silence. Why, will you know, to touch your in a bow. Then, the conspiracy with Hayes. And now, we sit he saw. And now, Celeste's attempt to wrest from me what my parents left with so much sacrifice. And there, I'm with you, I still toppled. In that silence of the house, I felt something inside me rise again, a strength that I didn't remember I had. They wanted me to shrink, that I would leave quietly, that I would give everything to keep the pose. But I wasn't going to give anything away, not without fighting. And it was that afternoon that I took the first action that would change the course of everything. But first, I needed to be sure of one thing. Did he really have the courage to make that trap official? That same afternoon, I waited for the house to sink into silence. Darren had gone out for a meeting with the personal trainer, as he himself said with that air of superiority, as if he were doing something noble. Noble. I knew then that this would be the moment. I walked to his office with calculated steps. The place still bore the smell of the perfume he wore before he left. Woody, strong, almost arrogant. I sat down in his swivel chair, put my hands on the keyboard and stared at the computer screen as if it were a locked door. He always used our wedding date as a password. September 22nd, 1098. I tried. 220,998. Nothing, nothing. I took a deep breath. I tried the other way around. 899,022. The screen lit up. It was there that everything began to fall apart. I opened the browsing history with my heart in my throat, and what I found was more painful than any words spoken at that party. How to take a property in divorce without children, how to hide assets before signing separation papers, how to force signature in a public environment with witnesses. Why? How to revert property in wife's name. Every click he made was a stab in my back. I was being studied coldly, like a sheep about to be led to the cut. I opened the emails. There were messages exchanged with a contact saved as Sierra. Young, blonde, profile photo with heart filter. I went to the content of the conversation. Soon it will be all ours. She won't react. Trust her. It is passive. My mother will make sure she signs. Hayes already knows how to make it look cool. I don't know how long I stared at that screen. My body was present, but my soul seemed to be watching from the outside. Everything we built together, every bill paid with effort, every weekend I stopped living to support his growth, every concession, every silence of mine. It was there, summed up in one sentence. And then, oh no. Nothing see is passive. Emotions is human. What is you? He thought I was weak, that I would accept, that I would sign. I closed the notebook slowly. I stood up. No, I didn't cry. Not at that time. Is no concealment at that time, because something greater began to be born within me, an indignation that pushed the pain to a deep place. It was then that I understood. Either I got up, nay, deciding on, or they would run me over without looking back. There are times in life when we need to stop trying to understand why and start thinking about what you're going to do with what's left. If you've come this far with me, stay, because what comes after that, that's where the story turns. And believe me, there is still a turn that no one, not he, not her, not you, will expect. I went to the mirror in the hallway. I looked myself in the eyes. It had been a long time since I did this with attention, and there, in that reflection, I saw not a betrayed woman, but a woman who was going to act. But before I started, I needed to find out who this Sierra really was, and the answer was closer than I imagined. I still had the bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth when the doorbell rang again. The postman handed me a brown envelope with a foreign stamp and my name written in a firm, old, and almost ceremonial handwriting. It was from Germany. The sender, Leah Powder, until to Madorl to an incident tale. Kanzlei Bauer and Sone, law firm in Munich. Right there. My fingers trembled. I hadn't received anything from that side of the family for years. I sat on the chair in the living room with the envelope on my lap for a few minutes before opening it. That seemed like a sign, a whisper from the past. I opened it carefully. Inside, life nikanata come. One has so uncatchy on Yesawad. A formal letter, followed by some translated documents, and on. It was about my great aunt, Josephine. She never married. She was a literature teacher, eccentric, cultured, Nina Moonty, and disappeared from family life when I moved to the United States. He left. According to the lawyer, Anne Young, we found 2 properties, an apartment in downtown Munich and a house in Miami Beach, and a bank account with almost $1 million. For a moment, Leonard he sob, had Tonidas. The world turned. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. A part of me wanted to run to tell it, but the other, the quietest, the most wounded, the most lucid, smiled inside. That was not just an inheritance. It was a shield, a sword, an answer. Oh, desire and called down. And see, Chimtira. They were plotting to leave me with nothing. Little did they know that I now had more than they could imagine. But I wouldn't say a word. Not for now. I got up from my chair, went to the mirror at the entrance and looked at myself again. But this time, no, there was something different. A twinkle in the eye. A security that I hadn't felt in years. And, hey, mind you, it wasn't about the money. It was about having an ace up your sleeve. It was about not being vulnerable anymore. Do you understand that? That moment when life, out of nowhere, gives you a chance, a way out, a new beginning. Sometimes it comes hidden in an envelope, in a detail, in a memory, but it comes. If you've experienced something like this, or are waiting for this moment to come, comment below with a song. I know how it is, or I understand you. Because as much as we are alone, there are others like us feeling the same thing. I kept the documents in the safe, along with the title of the house. I went back to the kitchen, prepared a chamomile tea, and for the first time in a long time, I took a sip with a smile. I was no longer the passive Martha, and they still thought they were in control. But what Darren didn't know, it's just that I already had a plan. And it would all start when I met an old friend from the past. I called Isha on a cold Thursday afternoon. I sent a short message without many details. I just said, "Mom, I need you. Urgent, private, one tien, not so good, nothing more." She replied, as quickly as always, arranging to meet me at the small office she keeps on K Street, between an Italian coffee shop and an old stationery store. Aisha Cole was my roommate in college. She was the kind of woman who faced an arrogant professor head-on, who wrote articles with the precision of a razor. We got a little lost over the years. Life took us to different sides. But it only took one request from me for her to say, "Come, under, here." I took a folder with everything, not all. Title of the apartment, new. Copy of the emails. Screenshots of the conversation with that Sierra. Darren's searches. And, of course, the inheritance papers. When I entered, Aisha stood up and hugged me tightly. I felt the warmth of someone who not only remembered me, but who still saw me. Really. We sat down, and she began to flip through the documents in silence. the serious eyes. Sometimes I made a note. Sometimes I let out a hum. The clock seemed to have stopped. I felt my hands sweaty, but my face calm. Nudged knew why. Jaffa. It was as if my body was sharing tension with relief. After almost 20 minutes, she closed her briefcase and stared at me. Martha, do you have any idea what he tried to do to you? I nodded slowly. This here was a legal ambush. He prepared to destabilize you, to embarrass you, and on top of that, take everything. But he made two mistakes. First, it underestimated who you are. Second, well, what is it? I didn't know you had that. She touched the sheet that confirmed the inheritance. I took a deep breath, and she continued, oh, well, the Artserska Arturst. With that, with Atman. Martha, he can't touch you anymore. You're safe. What's more, you can fight back. Hearing those words was like breathing after months underwater. My shoulders, which were tense, seemed to lower for the first time. Ayesha then smiled with that corner of her mouth that she always did when she had a good idea. But the choice is yours. Do you want to fight now? Or do you want to wait for the right moment? I looked at her with a different sparkle in my eyes. Wait. I want him to think he won. She laughed. That's what's going to hurt him the most. Silence, elegance. I left there with a lighter soul, but with a heavy decision made. I would go all the way, but calmly. My word no dropped. I did hear what? Muchish. With wisdom, I went back home. Put the briefcase in the false bottom of the winter clothes closet, the one Darren never touched, and I started to act as if nothing had happened. He made his coffee alone. He answered with kindness. He did not contest his absences. And, little by little, I started planning every detail of the party, each name on the list, every microphone. What they didn't know is that that party would be the stage, and I would be the last act. But for that, I still needed to know one more thing. Who exactly was Sierra? After that conversation with Aisha, something in me reorganized. It wasn't like lightning that strikes and destroys everything. It was more like the day that dawns slowly. We don't even notice the light coming, but suddenly we see the details of things again, and I began to see my house, my name, my history clearly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I owned my path, and this is priceless. The next morning, I went to the bank, one of those old ones, with cold marble on the floor, and attendants who still call you by your last name. I opened an account of my own, in silence, quietly. No connection to the joint account. No. I transferred some of my savings, a small enough amount not to arouse suspicion, but large enough to ensure that if something happened, I wouldn't be held hostage by anyone. I did everything as the law dictates. I went home, prepared my lunch, and for the first time, I didn't make Darren's dinner. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a message. I didn't justify it. He arrived and asked, Did you have dinner? I smiled calmly. No, I ate earlier. He frowned. Oh, I am day. Digital arts faster with dressing how, but did not insist. He thought it was tiredness or apathy. And there I realized he thought he was winning. I started to go out more, going to the market alone, new, visiting the city library, one-stop farm, and soy Octavian, walking the streets of Bethesda with time. It seemed like routine, but it was strategy. Every step I took was measured. Every absence of mine at home was a presence in myself that came back as he delved into sneaky phone calls, suspicious encounters, and plans he thought I didn't see. I went at my own game. I went to the notary's office, where we registered the property when we got married. The notary was the same, a gray-haired gentleman who recognized me right away. I took the original document that my father gave me in 1998. He smiled when he saw it. We saw it. Yes, Mrs. Sterling, Wassil, and the Marianne. This is a gift registered in a notary's office. The property is in your name, fully. Yeah. I asked him to make a new official statement, stamped, dated, and authenticated. I kept it with the care of someone who guards the last candle on a blackout night. Meanwhile, Hal, at home, the mood was the same. Superficial, he spoke little, new. I answered even less. No fight, no confrontation, just an elegant silence. And that made him comfortable. Darren believed I was in denial, that I was accepting, that I was slowly leaving. And maybe I was really leaving, but not in the way he thought. I was starting from the woman who one day needed his validation. The Martha he knew was already dying, and the one that was born, it was another, more strategic, more centered, new, and, above all, free. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think, because this story still has a lot to happen. That same weekend, I sat on the porch and wrote a list of 3 names, 3 people who would be key pieces for what I was preparing. And the first of them, it was closer than I imagined. It was strange to see Darren so full of himself. As I walked around the house as if living on autopilot, he walked lightly, as if a weight had come off his back. But what he didn't know, it's just that weight had a name, and it was me. He thought he had me under control. How? That my passivity was weakness, but what he mistook for submission. It was the silence of those who wait for the right time. That week, he began spending more time in his home office, locked up, as if he were doing something important. On one of the nights, I went to the door with a cup of tea in my hands, heard. And what I heard, it still echoes in me today. He was rehearsing new, out loud. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for being here to celebrate not only a 25-year cycle, but also a new beginning. Stop. I slowly leaned the cup against the sideboard. and I kept listening. Not all new beginnings are easy. I was, for decades, next to a good woman, but erased, sad, aged, and blue over time. Lindum, I realized that being out of pity is no longer love. I stayed because she had nowhere to go. He took a deep breath as if he were on a stage and continued, but now, when I say have Sarah, but now am ready to live my truth, with someone who inspires me, challenges me, wow, renews me, wow, and that person is Sierra. It was like being stabbed in the dark, but at the same time, the certainty that he would give me exactly what I needed. The confirmation, the plan was this: to expose myself, reduce myself, to demoralize myself in front of others, so that I would leave crestfallen, ashamed, accepting everything in silence. But silence. It was exactly what I had been cultivating, but not as weakness. Silence as preparation. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay down next to him as if nothing had happened. But inside, every cell of mine burned. Oh, I knew now. He was going to dismantle me in public, and that Sierra would be presented as the new assistant. His mother, with that face of false kindness, was already articulating among the guests. She feigned surprise, but she was the one who organized the chairs, the speeches, the lights. It was all orchestrated, but none of them knew that I was the only one with the actual score. I needed to keep my gaze down. Sweet speech, the neutral expression, as if I were the staging of the overcome wife, because they needed to believe that the plan was going to work. And the more confident they became, the more certain the fall would be. No, sometimes a woman's greatest strength is not letting her know that she already knows. If you've been here with me so far, hide the voice and keep going, because the most remarkable moment in my history is yet to come. And when he gets on that stage, thinking he's in control, he will discover the bitter taste of the poison itself. One soon. But before that, something happened. An unexpected visit that changed everything. That morning, I put on my gray blazer, the pearl earrings I inherited from my mother, and left early. I took the subway to DuPont Circle, got off, and walked the streets of Washington with the same firmness as someone who carries more than documents. I carried my story. I went straight to the German consulate, the imposing facade, the flags waving in the wind, and that bureaucratic silence that only places like this have. I handed in all the papers with calm hands, but my heart beating strongly. The attendant, a tall young man with thick glasses and a kind countenance, read everything carefully, passed it to the colleague next door. Miss, aber not to that signal next door. Asked a few questions, and then, with a dry and firm stamp, he validated each line. There, it was done. The house in Munich, the bank account, found bald. on the steadfastly, and the Miami Beach apartment that Josephine bought in the 80s and never let anyone know. It was all legally in my name, with international validity. I left with the sun beating down on my face and allowed myself to sit on a bench in the square, watching the pigeons and the young people going to their offices. I found myself there 30 years ago, full of dreams and certainties, and now, no, us, retire. On that same soil, I was different, more whole, more real. From the consulate, I know. I headed straight to an address on Brickell Avenue, where the broker who handled Josephine's assets in Miami was waiting for me for a video call conversation. With it, I lined all the details. Maintenance of the property, a stomach, updated values, possibilities of sale or future use. I was clear. What? For now, no, tell him. It was just a safety piece of information. But maybe, another, who knows? Maybe a new beginning. In the afternoon, I met Icy again. We sat in a private room in her office. She reviewed the 3 main documents with me. The certificate proving that the Bethesda property was exclusively mine. The internationally recognized inheritance. And, finally, the divorce petition, already drafted, with all the terms that protected me from any abuse. Here it is, Martha. He thinks he has control, but he has nowhere else to touch you. Everything here is armored. Legal, and that's it. Only one thing is missing. The right time. I kept everything in a black briefcase, with a zipper, one of those old leather ones. I took it with me home. That one too. There's sound. I took it with me home, and there, while you also Kashawahin too. That same night, I opened the safe behind the winter clothes and put it away. I closed the door of the safe on Chanukan, locked it with the key, and I breathed, silent, the Owenakan Hosiyam, but prepared. No, you. There are memories that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. But this one I kept with pleasure, because it wasn't just paper. It was proof that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to take from us what we have built with dignity. Tell me something. Do you also have such a memory that marked you forever? If you do, leave it in the comments. I've lived something like this. I remembered someone. These stories create bonds that we can't even imagine. I closed the bedroom window. Outside, the street lights flickered as if they didn't even know about the silent war going on in that house. But there, with me, there was no more fear. What was left now? It was the stage, and the moment to climb on it was getting closer and closer. The afternoon before the party, I put on my beige knitted blouse, tied my hair in a discreet bun, and left without fanfare. I took the subway to Foggy Bottom, and from there I walked to the Watergate Hotel. I didn't tell anyone. Neither did Candace. Neither did Aisha. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The entrance to the hotel was as usual, sophisticated, imposing, with that expensive smell of waxed wood mixed with the perfume of people too rich to be kind. I walked with slow steps, as if only strolling. Now, and asked to see the hall reserved for the next day's event. I used a fake name and a calm smile. We have so dirty what I see when. The manager took me there. It was a large hall with high ceilings, cream curtains, and chandeliers that seemed to float. In the center, wow, tables are being arranged, silver cutlery, glasses lined up, and there, one dog, Aunt Siggy, standing by the buffet table. She was young, in a light pink dress, loose hair, and high heels. I was tasting the food and talking on this cell phone. Wow. From my love, it will be all ours. I can't wait to live in that huge apartment. And the suite, wow. Oh, the suite is perfect. My heart beat slowly. It didn't hurt like before. I want no more. Now I steady down to twine. It was a mixture of indignation and feather. Ah, she didn't see me. Or maybe you saw me as you see a chambermaid, any visitor. I got closer with a curious look and asked, as if I knew nothing, "Is there going to be a party here tomorrow?" She looked me up and down, smiled with an air of superiority, and said, "Oh, hi. Yes, a renewal of vows, or rather, the beginning of a new life." He smiles back with the same serenity of someone who already knows the end of the film. "It looks beautiful," I said. "It will be. My surname, Capchow. He will be free. You'll see." That phrase. It was the seal of cruelty. Her arrogance didn't hurt me. It gave me strength, because everything about her was fragile and feigned. She didn't know she was standing in a house of cards. I waited for her to leave, and then I asked the manager to confirm the details of the event. 100 guests. Center microphone. Meridia. Center microphone. Screen with photos of the couple. Wine. Presidential or no Tito Wackle couple. French buffet. Dessert table with mirrored trays. Uniformed waiters. Everything impeccable. A magazine event. But what no one knew is that that party would not be a celebration. It would be a symbolic funeral, the end of a cycle. I moved on. The burial of an illusion. I returned home with firm steps. It was as if every cell in my body knew the waiting time was over. Now, I opened the safe. I took the folder. Now, I touched with affection on the 3 main documents. I read each one as if reading a testament of freedom. I closed it. I put it away again. That night, I didn't make dinner, so I'd story so. Darren came in late, didn't even notice, and I slept with a kind of peace that only those who have suffered in silence know. The next day, I would wear my navy blue dress, the same one he praised on our 10th anniversary. But this time, he would not know what awaited him. Have you ever seen someone fall off their pedestal? Because tomorrow, someone will. The sound of the leaps on the marble echoed louder than my breath. I entered the Watergate Hall with my head held high and my heart calm. He wore the navy blue he had worn on our wedding day 25 years ago. Blue. It was no coincidence. It was a choice. That fabric carried memories. But that night, It would be a symbol of something else. End and rebirth. The soft lights of the hall reflected in the bowls. The flower arrangements in shades of cream and gold were perfect, and everything around smelled of an attempt at elegance. But what I saw was staging, a theater. I greeted the first guests with a restrained, discreet smile. Many hugged me as if they really saw me. Others just for formality. Most did not know. Some may have suspected it, but no one was ready. Not even him. Sierra walked around the room in a dress that was too tight for the occasion, and a confidence that only the naive have. When he passed me, he gave me a quick look, not knowing that I already knew every detail of his plans. Darren introduced her as his new marketing assistant, with a naturalness that only cynics achieve. I saw some looks among the guests, whispering, small unspoken questions. Celeste, with her cream blazer and pearl necklace, smiled widely. Oh, Ty, that smile that already comes with poison. She shook hands. Leo, patted her on the back, made it seem like everything there was hers. Pride stamped on his face, proud of a son who was about to stage a coup, and she, applauding inside. Darren? He was restless. He fiddled with his jacket, looked at his watch. He ran his hand through his hair frequently. He was about to become the most watched man in the room. But I didn't know. I felt everything. I observed everything. But on the outside, no. It was silence. The elegant, gentle woman that everyone was used to seeing. The one who spoke softly, listened a lot, and demanded little. But there was something that no one saw. In my bag, nice. The black briefcase rested. 3 documents, 3 pillars of a truth that he did not know. The property, the inheritance, the ready petition. I'd come there, and more than that, my decision not to be silent anymore. I saw Attorney Hayes in the background, and he was there as a guest. But he wasn't sitting. I into hands crossed, dark suit. He knew he just had to wait for the right moment. The stage decoration was almost ready. The central microphone, the screen positioned, eyes, the lights directed. It was supposed to be the climax of the party, the great moment when Darren would speak of new beginning, of freedom, of new life. But that microphone, it was mine. I knew exactly where the speakers were. The sound point. I said not a word. I did copy your steps. The technician in charge. I had the map of the party in my head, planned by them. I saw it sad, dominated by me. And as the band tuned the instruments, and the glasses began to fill with champagne, I sat in one of the armchairs next to the piano. I crossed my legs, adjusted the necklace around my neck, and took a deep breath. After all, it all bag would not sound. Need my insert out. Every show needs a little silence before the curtain rises. But could Darren really start the speech before hearing mine? The master of ceremonies, a friendly man in a light gray suit, adjusted the microphone with a smile, and called, "New ladies and gentlemen, with you, the host of the evening, Darren Price." The hall was filled with formal applause, some sincere, wow, others obligatory. I sat down, now tall, silent, with the briefcase on her lap, closed, watching. Darren walked to the stage with firm steps, but I knew that floor well, and I saw there the slight faltering of someone who still has doubts about whether he will achieve what he planned. He raised his champagne glass, looked around, not know what he saw, and with a rehearsed smile, began, "Van Sue, how, friends, why are ye? 25 years is a brand, a reputable brand. But not every brand is a sign of success." The phrase fell in the hall like a cutting whisper. I saw the look of surprise on some faces. Most smiled, yellow, thinking it was a joke, but I didn't. I knew it. He continued, "Oh, when we are young, we make choices with a heart full of hope. But life, and you, over time, shows that not every walk goes in the same direction. There are people who grow, who transform, and there are people who stay." Wow. Sierra, no, sitting at the head table, Lou crossed her legs slowly and smiled, feigning elegance. Her mother-in-law, that told Michelle. Celeste adjusted the pearl necklace and looked around as if to say finally. Darren glanced at me, a short, neon, cold look that wanted to reduce me there, in front of everyone. I lived for 25 years with an honest woman, Chantal. Yes, but that faded over time. A woman who stopped dreaming, who settled down, and I, for a long time, thought that this was loyalty, but it was just fear. The murmurs began. Lol, Tom. The indignation at the nearest tables was visible. An older couple exchanged uncomfortable looks. Another lady shook her head in disapproval. Today, no, gosh, I choose to start over, not on a whim, but for truth. From today, I start a new chapter with those who really understand what I am, with those who share my vision, my energy, my passion for life. And then he looked for her to Sierra, who returned the look with a window smile. I'll. Celeste folded her hands over the bag on her lap and smiled. How? Hayes, at the back of the room, Albon, was already beginning to move. But before any other sound came up, I stood up. I stood up. I held the bag tight and walked slowly. Each step of mine silenced a comment. The conversation ceased. Their eyes turned. One by one, I did it until the hall, once pulsating, was put on hold. I took the stage calmly. I looked at Darren. He stood still. Wow. Almost without reaction. I grabbed the microphone with both hands. I turned to the audience and said, "What happened? Now, can I talk? If there is something that we live and keep, but maybe, by telling, we help another heart to breathe. So let me ask you, enjoy this video, subscribe here to the channel. And let's make this story reach those who need to hear it. Because what I said after that, no one there ever forgot it. Want to know what it was? The microphone weighed less than I imagined. Or maybe it was the weight that fell off my shoulders. After years of swallowed silence, that made my hands light. I took a deep breath, looked at that sea of faces, some surprised, some uncomfortable, some truly touched, and began. Good night. First of all, I want to thank everyone who came. Many here have known me for years. Some, why, perhaps just by sight. But today, you will know something deeper. The truth? I turned around a little, looking at Darren. He tried to maintain his posture, but the sweat on his forehead and the tense grip on his jaw gave him away. Yes, it's true. 25 years are not erased with a speech. But sometimes it is exactly in speech that it is revealed who a person has always been. Or it stopped being. I saw Sierra try to hide her discomfort, crossing her arms and looking to the sides. Celeste squinted her eyes as if waiting for a storm. During those years, I walked alongside a man who said he loved me, who promised to protect me, but, on the sly, he made loans in our name. He went on non-business trips, and he sent intimate messages to another woman while sleeping in the same bed as me. The room began to breathe differently. I heard a low murmur. A creaking chair. It's not easy to say that, but sometimes what destroys us inside, it is precisely what needs to be said out loud. No calm. I paused and took the first envelope out of my bag. I opened it calmly. I showed it to the public. This one, it is the document of ownership of the apartment where we have lived for 20 years. A property that was a gift from my parents, even before I got married. It is in my name, only in my, and it always has been. So when he, or anyone else, suggested that I leave by the end of the week, I turned my face slowly to Darren. He forgot one detail. This place was never his. The shock was audible. A murmur spread through the room like fire in dry straw. Darren stepped forward. Wow. Confused, his mouth half open. But he said nothing. What? And there's more. I opened a second envelope. I received a letter from Germany. My great aunt, Josephine, whom few here have heard of, left an inheritance, a house in Munich, an apartment in Miami Beach, and an account with more than $1 million. Stopped. No. I looked at Sierra. Did you want a home? You'll have to look for another one. That sentence fell like a blade. But it says calmly, no hatred, no scandal, with truth, haze. In the background, lowered his eyes. He discreetly kept the papers he had brought. They would no longer be needed. Celeste stared at the floor, her face expressionless, perhaps for the first time since I had met her. Darren, he tried to understand. But he couldn't. He was pale, Yeah. He breathed through his mouth. The words did not come. I heard you talk about freedom, Darren. And he is right. Freedom is a gift. So I leave yours with you. I dropped the last envelope on the table. It was the divorce petition, already signed by me, ready to be filed. Did you want to start over? Now, honey, dig still and see money come, and you're okay. That was the year. It can, without me, without my home, without my story. No, because whatever they tried to take away from me, they never succeeded. They never depended on you. And then I looked around to those who still value respect. Thank you for being here. To those who don't, good luck with conscience. I squeezed the microphone with both hands. My eyes were calm. Untouched. My whole body trembled inside, but no one saw it. And I closed with what hurt the most, but it also freed. You wanted freedom. Now, there are two of us. There are moments in life when we don't scream. We reveal it. And at that time, the world really listens. Stay with me, because there's still one more thing that happened later. Something none of them expected. Oh, you will understand. The heavy silence of the hall was broken by the first whispers, which soon turned into audible murmurs. Some guests stood up. Others simply stared at Darren in disbelief. What was supposed to be a joyous party turned into an informal courtroom. Accusing looks, heads shaking, and whispers of indignation spreading through every corner of the space. Sierra tried to retreat, seeking the exit with quick steps, but was soon surrounded by colleagues and acquaintances who could not contain themselves. Homewrecker, nail volunteer, one chat for stay, one same chat. I heard someone say. Another voice echoed, Juan, are you not ashamed? She looked away, not knowing where to turn. One of the young people began to record the scene with his cell phone. And the sound of the click echoed as if marking the end of a farce. Hayes, realizing that his presence was no longer useful, and perhaps fearing exposure, stood up quietly and disappeared into the hotel hallways. Celeste tried to compose herself, but the mask of false serenity fell. She approached Darren, holding his shoulders, and muttered in a trembling voice, You destroyed everything we built for. Darren was tense, his eyes glazed over, his lips parted, while muttering almost to himself, She deceived me, but no one believed it. Every gesture, one panelon of a gesture, every word sounded empty. Accusations began to spread around the hall. Well, you're a traitor, a coward, an ungrateful. The faces around him, once smiling, now reflected judgment. Darren's CEO, who had remained calm until then, approached and, in a firm voice, requested a private conversation. Darren, we're going to need to review your position in the company. It was the final blow. Authority, recognition, respect. Everyone leaving at that moment. Sierra, no, she calm, still trying to assert himself, launched the last sentence that betrayed his hopelessness. You promised a home, and you have nowhere to drop dead. And then like a withdrawing shadow. He left the hall. There was no more ally. There was no more plan. Just the naked reality. Celeste sat in a corner, her hands on her face, sobbing softly. Why didn't I had the salty. The glow of his ostentation had faded. Martha, on the other hand, walked calmly between the tables, picking up her bag, taking a deep breath. My every step was one of peace. Every move was that of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. The house of cards, erected with such premeditation and cruelty, had collapsed. The man who thought he was invincible, the one who tried to steal not only a home, but my dignity, was now alone, surrounded by disapproving looks and heavy silence. Outside, the evening breeze touched my face. I took a deep breath, feeling for the first time in years the sensation of complete freedom. The party had become the stage of my silent justice. And the city of Washington, with its lights and quiet streets, seemed to recognize my rebirth. But while the salon was behind us, the story was not yet fully told, because, as much as that moment had been my victory, there were issues that needed to be closed, decisions that only I could make, choices that would still shape my life and his. And at that moment, as I walked to the cab that would take me back to Bethesda, I thought, what else would he have to face before he truly realized that it was all over? The Washington courthouse was silent when I walked in. The smell of waxed wood, mixed with the neutral scent of the air conditioning, brought me a strange feeling of nostalgia and gravity. I sat down, tucked my black briefcase next to it, and looked at Darren. He looked like another man. His shoulders slumped. Not top, and I'm not said, his suit ill-fitting, his hair already sprinkled with gray strands that he had previously hidden with precise hairstyles. Next to him, a young public defender held some papers, clearly trying to understand the extent of what he would have to defend. The judge, a lady with thin glasses and a steady gaze, opened the case book and began to review every detail. I felt my heart beat steadily, but calmly. There was no anxiety, just focus. The justice I had cautiously planned had finally reached its apex. Property in M Street, Bethesda, the judge said, adjusting his glasses after analyzing the documents presented. It is clear that it is a premarital and exclusive asset of Mrs. Martha Sterling. It is not subject to division. Darren swallowed, knotted caca, his hand, which trembled slightly, tried to reach for the briefcase with his papers. But the sight of my serene expression froze him. He didn't say anything. The judge continued, we do little quiet. As for the weekend cabin and the Lexus S300 vehicle, they will be divided equally. However, the debts incurred without Ms. Sterling's consent or benefit, $43. Zero in personal loans are the sole responsibility of Mr. Cow. Darren Price. I felt the air come out of my lungs in a silent sigh. Every detail had been foreseen, every document checked, every step calculated. Justice did not need shouting. No, just patience and strategy. When the judge slammed the gavel, oh, decreeing the divorce, lammed out, the weight of 25 years began to dissipate. The room, the cell, the Kananashikastu, which minutes before had seemed charged with tension, now breathed in silence. Watching me, I kept my shoulders straight, my expression calm. Oh, there was no revenge here. Only freedom conquered with dignity. No, outside the courtroom, he tried to move closer, down, a hesitant gesture, almost begging. Martha, you were everything. Forgive me. He murmured. That's what I'm doing. Yo. His voice trembling. Smile. Distant hard down. Not with irony, not with anger, but with serenity. I've already forgiven you, but now I'm alone. He stood on the stairs, watching as I walked to my new Audi, acquired with part of the inheritance that cemented my independence. With my hands firmly on the wheel, I took a deep breath and felt the wind lightly blow on my face. I looked at the city, Miguel, west of Bonan town, its streets and buildings, with different eyes. I didn't win to humiliate. I didn't win to prove that I was right. I won to be free, to finally live without fear, without manipulation, without betrayal. Every mile traveled in the car, every headlight, every traffic light was a reminder that my life now belonged to me. Darren stood there, small, without the Conant on the circulated Thursday, lost in his broken pride. As I moved on, the feeling was of lightness, of belonging to myself. The decisions that once seemed impossible, the plans that once had to be secret, were now fleshed out. Freedom had a sweet and silent taste, and as I drove through the streets of Bethesda, remembering every detail of what had brought me there, I realized that life goes on, that every choice, no matter how painful, builds the path that leads us to what we truly deserve. But there were still questions in my mind. How would he deal with the world now? Now, with the ruined reputation and the debts he could no longer transfer to me? What would Sierra do, now that the promise of wealth and security had been undone? And most of all, how would I move forward, keeping my heart light, while rebuilding my life the way I always dreamed? The court had closed a chapter, but life, this one, and still reserved surprises, and I was ready for all of them. I sit on the balcony of my Miami Beach apartment, looking at the sea that shimmers with the morning sun. And I feel a peace I haven't known in years. Darren now runs an Uber, living with his mother in a modest apartment, and Sierra has gone her own way, marrying someone who believed her stories. Celeste eventually learned that not all control over the lives of others brings lasting power. As for me, I live simply but fully. I work remotely as a consultant, tend my vegetable garden, immerse myself in the pages of European novels, and enjoy breakfast, while the sea wind reminds me that I am the owner of my time and my choices. The letter I received from Darren, asking for forgiveness, rests folded in the drawer. Not well. There is no hurt, only gratitude for having freed me before time ran out. I learned that strength is not in shouting or humiliating, but in maintaining dignity, acting with silence, and letting the truth inevitably reveal itself. This story taught me that every conscious choice, every gesture of patience and courage builds our freedom, and that no one can take away what does not depend on the goodwill of others. And this is what I want to share with you, who have accompanied me so far. Value your own truth. Do not hide from what you feel, but also know how to wait, observe, and act when the right time comes. If something in this story touched your heart, please leave your like. It's like a hug that warms and supports this space where we share our lives. Subscribe to the channel. Noah, until did you stay away? It's like an invitation to go back to drinking coffee together whenever I have a new story to tell. And tell me in the comments which city you are watching, so that we can feel this closeness, even if distant. Don't forget to activate the bell so you don't miss it when the coffee is ironed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, Miss Kaya, one time key. Each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another amazing story, because life continues to surprise us, and I will be here to share every moment of courage, silence, and victory.